Today, we're going to connect the dots on a story that really defined the early 21st century. It's a complex chain of events, war, revolution, and the unintended consequences that unleashed one of the most feared terror groups in modern history.
So let's start with a question, and it's a pretty staggering one. In 2014, a terror group seemingly came out of nowhere and managed to conquer a huge swath of territory, about the size of the United Kingdom. They controlled cities, oil fields, and millions of people. How on earth did that happen?
Well, to really get it, you can't start in 2014. We have to rewind the clock back to a single, clear, blue morning that absolutely changed the world forever.
Okay, so this is where it all begins. The catalyst. The spark that lit the fuse for everything that came after was, of course, the attack on September 11th, 2001. It was a moment that completely redrew the map of global conflict.
2,977. That's the number of people who lost their lives that day. And that singular, horrific event would trigger a response that echoed for decades.
Almost immediately, the United States declared what it called a war on terror. Now, this was something new. It wasn't a war against a specific country, right? It was this global campaign against a tactic, an ideology, and any nation that was believed to be supporting them. And the first front in that war had a lot of international support. In October 2001, U.S. and allied forces went into Afghanistan. The goal was pretty clear: dismantle al-Qaeda, the group behind 9/11, and get rid of their hosts, the Taliban. But this was only the beginning, because very soon the focus shifted in a really big way, and the 2003 invasion of Iraq is what our source material identifies as the pivotal moment, the decision that would fundamentally alter the entire region for years and years to come. Now, what's so interesting here is the contrast. The public reasons given for the war were all about these imminent threats, right? Weapons of mass destruction, supposed ties to al-Qaeda, neither of which, by the way, were ever actually found. But the analysis from our source points to a much more complex picture, a mix of ideology, strategic interests like oil, and frankly, a desire to project American power. In the aftermath, well, it was a catastrophe. The invasion didn't just topple a dictator, it was like taking the lid off a pressure cooker. A brutal civil war exploded between Sunni and Shia Muslims. This power vacuum became a magnet for extremists. And this is so crucial. A new group formed, al-Qaeda in Iraq. This was the direct precursor to ISIS. The very thing the war was meant to fight found brand new fertile ground to grow. So while Iraq was descending into chaos, a whole other wave of instability was about to crash over the entire region. In 2011, a series of popular uprisings, which we now call the Arab Spring, seemed to promise a new dawn of democracy. But look at these outcomes. It was so devastatingly mixed. You had Tunisia, which managed a very fragile transition. But in so many other places, things just collapsed. Libya became a failed state, and Yemen and Syria, they spiraled into two of the worst humanitarian crises of our time. That initial hope for freedom was mostly crushed by repression and unbelievably brutal civil war. So here's the key takeaway. You have the instability from the Iraq invasion colliding with the widespread chaos of the Arab Spring, especially the civil war in neighboring Syria. And what that created was this massive power vacuum, a huge, lawless chunk of territory stretching across two countries where governments had just lost control. And it was into this vacuum, this void, that a new and terrifying force emerged. And now, finally, we can go back and answer that question we started with. It was truly the perfect storm. The group we now know as ISIS, it built itself up from the ashes of al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was masterful at exploiting the anger of Sunni populations who felt completely shut out by the new Shia-led government in Iraq. And it used the absolute chaos of the Syrian civil war as its personal playground, a giant, ungoverned space to recruit, train, and just expand. And its rise was just shockingly fast. In June of 2014, it storms in and captures Iraq's second biggest city, Mosul, and declares this so-called caliphate. But for as fast as it rose, its hold on that territory turned out to be pretty fragile. An international coalition and local forces pushed back hard, and by March 2019, its physical state was gone.
But here's the thing, the end of its territory was not the end of the story. The consequences of this entire period from 9/11 all the way through the fall of the caliphate are still shaping our world today.
And the source material we're drawing from here, it really doesn't pull any punches.
It offers this incredibly stark conclusion. It points to the 2003 invasion as that one critical event that set this whole tragedy in motion, creating the very conditions that allowed for all the violence and extremism that followed.
And that really brings us to our final thought here. The source argues that these events are full of lessons. Lessons about intervention, about power vacuums, about the deep roots of conflict that maybe we still haven't learned. So it leaves us with a really critical question. What are those lessons? And are we just destined to repeat the same cycle all over again?